Hello, good evening. Welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for finding time for this evening's discussion. It's an important discussion. Just to introduce the context behind this series that we are doing at Mint in partnership with JSA Advocates and Solicitors. It's basically we are looking at the fact that India has grown its GDP size very, very well, and it's something that we are all very proud of. But the fact also remains that per capita income, living standards across our country is rather disparate. So in some places, the income is, per capita income is very high, and in some other parts, they're not so high. And that same thing goes for all our sectors. In agriculture, of course, we've had several challenges. Like we were discussing the other day, if you look at per capita income of farmers in Punjab, vastly different from per capita income of farmers in Bengal or Orissa or Bihar.
Look at discussions on economy in India and also at global level. I find agriculture is back on agenda. Like agriculture is attracting much more attention. So today, if attention is turning toward agriculture, almost everywhere, reasons are not scarcity. So because of that, I feel that there is really very poor understanding of what agriculture should do in the economy, what agriculture can do for economic development of economy. I really find that today we need to look at agriculture differently than but by the approach toward agriculture in 60s and 70s. I would say that I have written on it also at some places, that what Arthur Lewis assumed about agriculture and what Arthur Lewis assumed about manufacturing, both have turned out to be totally wrong in today's context. None of the assumption on which Arthur Lewis based his theories true at all about agriculture. Today's agriculture is having similar kind of technological change as any other area. I would say whatever technological change is happening in car is also happening in agriculture, but technologies are available. Now you look at second side of his assumption that manufacturing sector will suck labor from agriculture sector, and that is what will lead to a removal of disparity in per worker productivity in agriculture and non-agriculture and rural and urban. So this is how that convergence will happen. So this was just larger context in which I feel that today we need to reimagine role of agriculture.
And the another thing which you flagged, another aspect is which I found extremely interesting, and I have often encountered it while during my field reporting, is that the issue of labor. On the one hand, farmers saying that labor is not available, and the economists telling us there is surplus labor in agriculture. So I've never really found an answer to that. So, low import duties on oil seeds are actually making India chronically dependent on cheap imports. We have diversified into dairy, horticulture, high-value produce, but our policies and our research are very cereal-centric still. Keeping, of course, the farmers' income at the heart of it, the economic freedom part of the farmers. To add to what Dr. Chand said, the farm laws, to add to that, is also about whether farmers have freedom to sell. Our trade policy and how it puts a negative burden on farmers. The PSE, which is known as the Producer Support Estimate, is negative in India for Indian farmers, according to the OECD data. That farmers actually are negatively, there is implicit taxation on farmers. And then we'll discuss, of course, about farm productivity and in the era of climate shocks and how to ensure that the next generation doesn't lose interest. Sustainability and governance issues, the reforms which you said that, it's like maybe it will take a long time to get it back rolling. And another question is how to reduce the dependency on uncertain farm incomes, and whether we should be looking at when we look at rural India, whether we should be looking at something beyond farm incomes to improve the quality of life through, say, investments in public health and education, and also lastly, about how to ensure a fair deal to farmers when the land is acquired.
For a long time, we treat agriculture like a residual sector. Precisely because of this structural transformation imagination, it is treated like a residue. So I think it's really important to, place this idea that actually it is a driver of growth. And what we have seen in agriculture for a very long time is distress-driven diversification. So when you see farmers moving out, and the natural state in agriculture is that when people do well in agriculture, they diversify. When people do badly in agriculture, they diversify, right? But is the actual process going to be increasing amounts of distress-driven diversification or diversification on stronger terms, which is actually surplus sustained? So I think this point of placing agriculture at the heart of a new imagination of Indian economic policy, I think is really critical. I sometimes joke that Punjab both irritates and irrigates the Indian policy imagination. It continues to be the fundamental irrigator of our imagination to policy, but Punjab has had a very particular trajectory of focus on two essential food grains, wheat and paddy, and rice over a very long time, now nearly half a century, with a very strong MSP support regime. It has developed in a very distinct manner. Other states have innovated in different ways, and there are many lessons, both of what can be done and should not be done even in those places. Knee-jerk reactions, idiosyncrasy in policy, all of that, as well as a long history of underinvestment in agriculture across our states, unfortunately. But I think we have to learn, even for MSP, lessons on how you can do decentralized procurement better, how you don't have to do universal procurement.
See, where I sit from the farmer's point of view, I think we must recognize that there are two different sectors we are talking about. One is agriculture and one is farmer livelihoods, and they are not complementary. And if we have not met agricultural goals in this country, it's because of the incompetencies of the government and public elected representatives, in the sense that we have for the last 20 years, we have no agriculture policy, we have no new technology in seeds, we have no agriculture research development funding has actually gone down in most of those 20 years in real terms. We don't document failures. And this has been consistent across different political parties and governments. So I would say that any issues that we have with productivity or agricultural production, it's because of incompetencies. The other part is farmer livelihoods, where I think the government does not have the capability and capacity to deliver on those because they don't understand the nuances of it, or it's too complex for them. The third thing, when we come to incomes, because most people generally generate that if you increase productivity, incomes will increase. And where we've been very insistent on some time is that due to India's particular circumstances, it's not possible to improve incomes to such a point that people can live dignified livelihoods from their profession. And the circumstances could be very small land holdings, rain-fed agriculture. It could be because the government is always infatuated with inflation mitigation and factors like this, especially small holdings. So we can, and agriculture labor which does not have holdings, and they're still dependent on markets for their food. They're also consumers. But these factors will never allow sufficient incomes, even if you do C2 plus 50 like many farmer unions are asking, that people will have an income of their own, which means that we need to relook at agriculture policy from ground up and look at services for delivering. Because as when we started off the debate, somebody says that we need to give equal opportunities. I don't think so it's enough. We need to improve human capacity. And that means we need to focus on few things of delivering it. And it cannot come by incomes that people have enough income and they're able to buy those, get those services like healthcare, education, or public transport.
See, as far as how I see it is it's a continuum, and in this continuum there has to be marked improvement on a thing like monthly household income at the rural end. It cannot be a shift in a policy that just changes and it will never get implemented. So how do we do that in a continuum is my point at the earliest. And so if we have to lift that average monthly household income, we are now talking of the small and marginal farmer who is primarily dealing with rice and wheat, and that is the crop that has become surplus and it's subsistence plus. They are fragmented land holdings, low yields, and coupled with our huge import bill on oil and pulses, as was stated. So it is in this aspect that I think there is great recognition that one has seen with the kind of varietals and seed development research work that has been done and been put forward. In fact, the slant has moved into the horticulture sector. If you see the proportion of the seeds released, the 109 varietals that was launched recently. So definitely best-in-class practices is required, and in that the whole collectivization, right, whether it is the cooperatives, it's called cooperatives or collectives of FPOs, is another move by which these guys can come together and we can afford the mechanizations at a level. The thoughts and the policies and the directions are supporting even climate change with the crop cycles have reduced, right? A 120-day crop is now at 90 days, and he has to go through that change and earn what he's earning and more. Right. At a fundamental level, that is the challenge. Parallelly, the shift upwards into value-added products like organic, residue-free are important and they are remunerative, and the access to those markets have to become more and more.
Agriculture is a risky business. Lot of factors not in your control. So how do you mitigate risks? So today I think we have MSP, and then we have subsidized inputs, and perhaps little bit half-hearted attempts at insurance which doesn't work. Obviously, given the risky nature and also kind of the small farmer, etc., even in large countries like Brazil where people farm thousands and hundreds of thousands acres is still an issue. So obviously we need to create a safety net. But this MSP and then subsidized inputs has outlived its usefulness. So how do we transfer this money into a different form and make sure that it goes beyond paddy and rice? Because there are many more things. This thing, I think today, in fact, Mint, there was an interesting article, which also talked about other crops could also be reasonably or closely profitable compared to rice and wheat. And then when we talk about risk mitigation, one is of course at a policy level. Second, at a farmer level also a lot of behavioral changes have to happen. Because in this last 5 decades, I think people have moved to more or less monocropping or 2 crops or whatever. So if you have to mitigate risk at a farmer level, they have to diversify. Second, we have to introduce sustainable practices. Forget about organic farming or anything. But without this, we have another white swan event which will play out in the next few decades, which is climate change. And without sustainability at the core, there's no way we can tackle these things. And the third thing is investments. Obviously, average landholding 1 hectare, 2 hectares, whatever, they just don't have any money to invest in anything. So how do we create scale at the micro level? So when I talk about scale, how can we, let's say, pool farms together to create not necessarily thousands of acres, but even a 50 acre, 100 acre, whatever. At the same time, the farmer is assured that he's not going to lose his piece of land. Because then at least you can start investing in some things.
So my perspective on that, stepping a little away from the segment, is that ultimately there still remain 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, and innovation. And all that I've heard so far, and I'm sure we'll hear further, tells us that we are not using any of them effectively. I don't know why we fight shy to engage the actual stakeholder who, at the back of his or her effort, employs nearly 50% of India, in spite of 16% GDP, disproportionately lower, is not being supported in a structure which will take them to a different direction when 94% of the land yields less than 2% growth. What is it that we need to do to try and encourage them to move? Because as Raj Shekhar says, Ajay says, it's a risky business, understood. But certainly it's also, at some level, the demand is necessary. There are 140 plus crore people who need to be fed every year. Then why do we lose 14 million tons of crop and grain every year at the cost of 7,000 to 8,000 crores a year? Why is it that we can't get to cold chains? It's long gone now. 1970 is long away. So I fundamentally, it tells me that at some level, the engagement of the policymaker with the actual stakeholder and all the stakeholders around them, whether it's capital, land, labor, or it's scientists and technology, are not engaging in a systems thinking where we can attack the problem holistically. One thing missing which we found, and I'm sorry I'm raising it, when we found that problem of the farm laws and the failure of taking it through, was intensive dialogue. Dialogue came after. I suspect dialogue must come before. Because the people who feel the pain, if engaged, and it's very straightforward, is the same government that got the GST Council with somebody from the opposition chairing it. It's Mr. Vajpayee who brought fundamental reforms early on, even before Narasimha Rao. So the blueprint is available. It has the largest base of people on the ground at the district and village level.
12% of Indian agriculture is on horticulture, and it contributes to 24% of Indian agriculture's value. 41% is under cereal crop, contributing to 19%. And that is what we are all talking about. What's happening here? So something has to happen to move in the direction of fruits and vegetables. That's where it's going to come in. Then we look at 10 years from now. I'm not even looking at 2047 because I know I won't be around. I'm looking at 2035. I have a good stab at that. I'll be 71 if I'm alive in 2035. India is positioned to be a $10 trillion economy in 2035. Today, Indian agriculture is contributing about 15% of the GDP, and that's approximately about $480 billion to $500 billion. Which means that if we have to make sure Indian agriculture contributes 15% of the economy even in 2035, you need to be at $1.5 trillion contribution. And that is not going to happen with a business as usual approach. We really need to step out. It's a T20 that is on now. We really need to step out because we are effectively 20 cropping cycles away. 24 is gone. You're 20 cropping cycles away. So we need to address the challenges of water scarcity, soil health, which is really bad, and also nutritive value of your crops. That is also on the lower side. So, but is it scary? I think the challenges also present opportunities because when you're under stress, that's when you take decisions. And that is what is needed today.
Just a brief about myself. I'm a farmer's son and studied agriculture and practicing agriculture. So I have seen right from farmer field to corporate. So that entire spectrum, I'm quite aware. One, first of all, Dr. Chand has given a very comprehensive overview and the issues are flagged very clearly. I will be a little brief. Just to supplement what Mekhla has said, Amit has said, and also Ajay has said, Because this is a fundamental issue, that how can we list down national priorities for agriculture, and why we are not able to build up consensus. I think time has come, as Amit has rightly pointed out, on the pattern of GST Council or so, we should have National Agriculture Council, we should have states on the board, we should discuss threadbare all the issues of challenges and opportunity for agriculture. In this process, there should be fair level of alignment, and this friction should not be there, because right now implementation is in the hand of agriculture, states, and policies are directed. One very fine example I should like to quote, sir. You had developed a wonderful Model Land Leasing Act 2016 for aggregation of the land. Such a beautifully drafted act. But till date, it has not been adopted by all states in all crops. Fundamental issue. So there needs some structure, some mechanism where everybody, all concerned are on board, and this issue should be raised in a candid manner. These are the real issue, and market and climate change cannot wait for anybody. These don't respect administrative boundaries.
So I think there are four large points which I think the last wave of the last 5-7 years, whatever capital investment has happened into startups and agri has done. First one is kind of trying to build in better market access, to the point that Roshan Lalji was saying, is that can they find an alternate market? Can you get closer to the farmer? Can you use digital means to get closer to the farmer, and so on and so forth? I think these need to be viewed with a decadal shift and not with a 5-year window. That's what kind of we believe. It's still half-life, I think, to be honest, for all the startups out there. But that, I think, is the first area where more of them started to work. The second, and I think the most important area where they can actually add value, is to collaborate with larger organizations, both on the corporate side as well as kind of on the grower side, and become a tech-enabled intermediary, for lack of a better word. Whether that means a conduit to help them get better technologies, a conduit to help build service platforms. Somebody raised the point about services for farmers. I think incredibly important for us as a country to think of the farmer as a customer also. There will be a decline. Farming is not an easy profession. There will be a decline in the number of people who want to take up active farming. Can they get access to professional services, whether it's precision ag, whether it's access to new age technology, at the right price point? We talk about IoT, hardware, monitoring, data being monitored, but the cost of that is quite high. So until or unless there's collectivization of any form, it's very difficult to transfer that benefit down to the growers. So that is, I think, another area. The last one is kind of distributed assets. I think we've talked about it, but from a value addition perspective, just maybe farming or growing alone is not enough. How can we capture more of the value closer to the farm gate through distributed? Again, somebody brought up the question of food loss and wastage that we do. It's not that we're not producing enough. Many a times we are producing enough, but we also waste a lot of it during our supply chain activities. How do we hold back more of the value closer to the farm gates? I think that is an area of interest, investments, everything else, as well as policy. And that is frankly where I think startups can also play a role by working more closely with different stakeholders.
When we talk of family income or livelihood or distribution of opportunity, we have not yet spoken of 50% of the population, the women, and the feminization of agriculture. In most parts of India, the able-bodied male has migrated looking for whether income or action or pace of life or whatever. So a large part of the farming is handled by the women. And these three tales, I'll tell you, are from three different pockets which I have personally witnessed. And I wear the lens of somebody who works with different NGOs on ground to see what is happening. And some of these are all the aspirational districts, or two of them are at least aspirational districts from Niti Aayog. One of these tales is from Northeast UP, from Balrampur. The first time I visited, there was a cadre of these youngish women around 20, who were being put together, and they were talking and speaking to farmers on terms of better farming practices and working links. Almost all of them were being escorted to their workplace within the village, etc., by the brothers, and so on and so forth. Exactly a year later, when I visited, they all had scooties, and lo and behold, there were at least 30% of that group of about 30 odd women had sindoors. So the social change was so dramatic that it was not just the betis of the village, but also the bahus which were coming out. And quite obviously the answer was they were contributing so significantly to the overall income within the household, other than all the other aspects, that the dynamics changed. Move to Marathwada, again very drought prone, and a different category, more the Thais, the 40s kind of women. And they're working with an adaptation of the well-known 1 acre model, but just where they were actually paying the family to take some of that land on lease and moving to the thoughts like horticulture, etc., that have been talked about, doing what is possible and feasible within that. Not just a marketable surplus, which is contributing again to the family kitty very strongly, because you're also keeping that plot of land in use through most of the year. It's not just restricted to a 2-crop cycle, but also a lot grown for the family's self-consumption, so the nutrition standards dramatically improving. Overall impact, their status within the family, their voice within the family shoots up.
Can we take some questions? If we have a very limited audience, but if you have any questions, please feel free to ask any of the speakers. And that can come from each of, I mean, you can cross-question each other for a couple of minutes also. If someone, yeah, please.
I have a question on the taxation regime. I mean, why isn't that the government, and this is a sort of a difficult one in terms of the policy. Why can't the government make a choice between, or distinction between the rich farmers and the middle or the lower rung farmers, and the taxation regime should apply to large farmers? I mean, at today's level, I think purely from the federalism construct, it's critical, in fact, and that money, by the way, can be put back for the welfare of the farmer, for the very same things that all of you have been debating. That money can be a pool for the farming community, for the tech, for any other thing, yeah, I mean, that's one of the thought. And the second question is, why is it so difficult for all the stakeholders to come together and deal with the issues? I'm trying to just basically just think, and here is the table in which you have cross-section of people here sitting with different points of view. Why is it that it's so difficult for the government to get the entire stakeholders in one room and just sort things out?
My understanding is, as per the Constitution of India, agriculture is a state subject, and the union government does not have the authority to tax farmers on their agriculture income. The second point is that when other sections of society are taxed for agriculture, they are allowed to grow in their own sphere of business. An industrialist can have more industries, a startup can have more industries. As far as agriculture is concerned, large farmers can't buy more land because there's land ceiling everywhere. So you're not allowing farmers to grow in their area of expertise, and so that's also, if you look at morally and logically, that could be a reason. But definitely, in this political economy, I don't think so. The government, even if the constitution allowed it, the government couldn't have done it. That's the third point.
Okay. Amit, would you like to add something to that?
I think it's more a policy issue at the end of the day. Today, we saw recently Supreme Court came down and said that within the reserved class also, you distinguish between people who are economically back and not. If there is a set of people in the SC, ST or other who need protection, but they have had a couple of generations of well-being, and there's no need to give them the same opportunity. So I think it's a question of whether the politician is willing to bite the bullet or not. It's a matter of law. And that, I don't think there is any injection that you can put on the spine. That has to come from within.